Now we'll come back and talk about the weather. We need to talk about the weather, right? Someone thought it was a nice, beautiful day. Well, it was right directly above Manhattan, but not a few miles off the East Coast. See, it's as nice as can be. Here's Geraldo Rivera, who's chased out hurricanes for 40 years.
Have been so attracted over the years to hurricane coverage, but there's risk involved. There is, the peril of not knowing what's going to happen, that adventure, and it's pitting yourself against an enemy. It's like war, only no one is shooting at you specifically. That's what the allure. But there is an area storm that the juices don't flow, and you look and check it out.
Look at that. Remember that? When that? I watched that live.
That may be a store on YouTube. You got to get up close and personal. And
this was Hurricane Ike, I think.
That was recent. That was wasn't this Rita?
You would know.
You know what? I think it was Rita.
Rita in Galveston, Texas. Yeah, Galveston. And obviously Katrina before that changed so many of our histories. It was so traumatic. And it's one funny thing I think of if only a hurricane had come on 9/11. Remember, they didn't know how to use instruments, the terrorists. They took off in Boston, and they literally, after they took over the aircraft, they steered by line of sight. And it was that crystal clear September day.
Sure was. Beautiful.
And if it were only one of these weather days, history would have been rewritten. And I think about that a lot now, and especially this time of year.
So
we're the peak of hurricanes.
Yeah, you're celebrating 40 years?
40 years, imagine that. Isn't that
40 years.
Longevity has its own revenge. I've outlived like 15 generations of TV critics.
Yeah.
They all predicted I'd be done in a couple of weeks.
Do you still get...
Everyone has those stories, right?
Oh, yeah.
But
This was just 2 years ago. I think this is Batter's Dead. No, it doesn't seem to advance. I'm going to click advance. This seems to be out of batteries or something.
Well, I don't know about that. Here again, you're asking us to deal with a fact I'm not aware of. I never heard about flames or fumes. Fumes coming out of a building. I'll tell you what, first of all, let me go to Steve in Florida. Steve in Florida, you're on the air. Go ahead, please, with Dr. Judy Wood.
Hi, Joy. Thank you for taking my call. Am I loud and clear?
Yeah, you are. Go ahead.
Judy, you have misrepresented the facts concerning Hurricane Aaron. I live here in hurricane country, Florida. I track all the hurricanes. Aaron hit Corpus Christi, Texas, 15 August 2007. Your opinion concerning 911 are not consistent with the facts provided on 911 ripple effect, last man out, Richard Gage's blueprint for truth, Blues Change Final Cut, Zero, an investigation into 911, and many other video documentaries. I don't know what planet you've come from.
Okay. I guess he's gone. I don't know what happened to Steve.
As for Hurricane Aaron, they did not retire that name. It has been used several times. It was first hurricane, I believe, of the 2001 hurricane season.
All right. Let me go back to George. George.
One funny thing I think of if only a hurricane had come on 9/11. And it was that crystal clear September day.
Sure was. Beautiful.
And if it were only one of these weather days, history would have been rewritten. And I think about that a lot.
This is what was shown on television that morning of 9/11. This is where the hurricane was at that moment. See anything missing? This is where the hurricane was, here. The satellite, the National Hurricane Center satellite images. That's Geraldo from that time. The rest is from 9/11. Yeah, Geraldo apparently didn't know there was a hurricane that day, and Joey Moore, a flight attendant on 9/11 who flew out of Boston's Logan Airport just before the fatal flight that left, did not know there was a hurricane either until he saw it on my website.
But why didn't they mention it?
That's the question. It begs the question, too.
Yeah.
Because you know how much they like to milk those for all they can get. They love to report on hurricanes.
But do you say that they were manipulating
I'm not saying anything. I'm just noticing if people didn't know there was a hurricane coming and you saw it was headed straight for New York, if it hadn't turned around when it did, Manhattan would have been flooded. And how fast can you evacuate that many people from Manhattan? Can you afford that risk unless you absolutely know there's no chance? Unless you know, how would you know? Right.
Was it reported on any other media, such as whatever the shipping forecast would be?
It is. It does show up the National Hurricane Center's, text forecasts, but they were very played down. They weren't shown on the media. People were not aware that there was a hurricane there.
It just seems, you'll excuse me, because I've done a fair bit of sailing, and there must be
Oh,
a bunch of ships on that coast.
they took the ships out to sea because they knew that the hurricane was coming.
But what about the small vessels that were sailing down the coast that have surely just been wiped out by the hurricane?
They may have looked into the National Hurricane Center's reports, but it was not something that was heavily publicized. It wasn't zero publicity on it, but it was very underreported.
I'm confused here. Are you saying that they actually moved the hurricane away? They had the technology to push the hurricane away?
Whoops.
Or it was just that coincidentally the hurricane went away?
Doesn't. Here.
Actually,
I can't back it up. The hurricane for 4 days was going in a straight line. And then on the morning of 9/11, it stopped, turned around, and that afternoon it started heading out of town.
so you think that was artificially done?
I'm just reporting what the evidence is. I don't want to guess, but I can say that if they didn't know it for 100% sure that it was going to turn around, if there's any question, why weren't people told to evacuate? Just in case.
Oh, because the people at the time were told to evacuate because of the hurricane?
No, nobody was told to evacuate because of the hurricane. That's the puzzle, that nobody was really told about the hurricane being there. It just happened to be there and then turned around and left quietly. We're told this is nice, wonderful September day, but it could have been used. Let's see, this isn't doing so well here.
Judy, as a suggestion, might I suggest that it would help like audiences such as like me and myself. This is completely surprising information, astonishing information. So to have a kind of secondary source of confirmation.
National Hurricane Center.
All that report, that one-line text or whatever it was.
I've got all of the references in my book, and this is that satellite image of the hurricane is from the National Hurricane Center. You can download it yourself.
I'm just saying that I think it would help your presentation.
Excuse me, drjudywood.com/articles/Erin. You'll find 5 pages of multiply referenced data from the UK Meteorological Office, from the Canadian Hurricane Data Centre, from the US Hurricane
Is that
Data
working?
Centre, and other sources. And I've got more if you want to write to me, I'll send you other stuff.
We'll take questions. We'll let you get through your.
The clicker doesn't work.
Oh, it's not working. Ladies and gentlemen, let's let Dr. Judy Wood get through her presentation. We've got plenty of time for questions afterwards. Thank you so much.
So let's also look at some other information. Now, the hurricane was going to turn around at some point. They thought on day one it was going to turn around because it was a high-pressure system moving across the U.S., but then didn't. Well, maybe on day 2 it didn't. Maybe on day 3 it didn't. Maybe on day 4. Thank goodness it did. They had predicted it was going to turn around all this time, but did they really know when? If they didn't know, they ran out of room. So here we have the high-pressure system moving in from the Midwest, and it's increasing, while the hurricane, which is a low-pressure system, is moving in from the Atlantic. And guess where they met and when? 10 a.m. on the morning of 9/11. They were superimposed at that area, so you have 2 counter-rotating systems, curiously. And interesting drop with the humidity. But let's look at this magnetometer information. This is the Earth's magnetic field from the ground, not from satellite, but from the ground, in Alaska. There's 6 different measurements. Each of the events on 9/11 are with a vertical bar. The first one is WTC-1 getting an airplane-shaped hole, then WTC-2, then WTC-2 goes poof, WTC-1 goes poof, and then later Building 7 goes poof. I say goes poof, they didn't collapse. They turned to dust. So it's interesting, it's pretty much a steady state and something different happens here. There was a solar storm approaching, but it didn't get to that point until a day later. So there's something else going on here. A closer look, about 20 minutes before WTC-1 got its hole, that's the North Tower, they started wandering off of their average value. And as soon as WTC-1 got its hole, it reverses direction. As soon as WTC-2 gets its hole, it goes horizontally. It's like one reversed the other one. Maybe coincidence? And then when WTC-2 goes poof, they start going downhill, but when WTC-1 goes away, it really drops off the cliff, and then things are all haywire all afternoon until WTC-7 meets its demise. The Earth's magnetic field, as recorded at 6 different stations. Again, here's where they start wandering down. There's actually 3 different measurements for when the North Tower got its hole. The 9/11 Commission report, the Palisades seismographic station, and the NIST report. I can tell you which one's right, based on where the turnaround happens. And see how these go horizontally after Building 2 gets its hole. These are the 6 different recording stations. It's just, a curious set of data.